Good afternoon. This is Shannon Gronich with the Business Acceleration Network and Media Magic. I am super excited about today's special guest. I'm going to give it a few minutes to let people get logged in. We have Teresa, Anton, Diane, Gio. Great. We have people slowly getting in, but today's special guest, Penny Zenker, is an individual that I had the opportunity to do a sit down with a few months ago. And I really am so excited that she's here and she's giving us her time today, because those that are our members, we're right now really focused on sales and marketing. And when I was talking to Penny, I had a big breakthrough and seeing the importance of productivity and how that impacts our bottom line and how that impacts our sales. And so asked her if she would join us today. Let me tell you a little bit about her. I'm still giving people a few minutes to get on, which is why I'm probably fumbling and bumbling. But Penny is a strategic business coach and trainer, boosting productivity for business leaders and entrepreneurs. She is the creator of the P10 Productivity Accelerator System, focused around the 10 core drivers of your success. These core drivers were derived from her personal experience building up and later selling a multi-million-dollar business as a senior executive at one of the world's largest market research companies and working with business leaders all over the world as a Tony Robbins business coach. Penny's proven and practical approach helps people get results quickly. I also wanted to let you know that she was recognized in Inc. and Forbes as a productivity expert. And so let's give her a warm welcome. Penny, hello. Thanks for joining us today.
Hi, Shannon. It's great to be here.
Welcome. So I know this is a two-part series. So today is kind of, she's going to be pouring her heart out, giving you some great tools, great information. She even has given a piece of her program, which will give you a website towards the end so that you can go and access that. And towards the end, we'll open it up, even though this is the training, and next week is the open office hours. So the open office hours is where you can ask Penny questions about you, about your project, what you need specifically to help you grow. But if you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat room. We'd love to hear from you. And we'll open that up towards the end for some questions on some clarity. But next week we'll dive in, and it'll be all about helping you. So, Penny, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay. Well, I'm going to do this with slides, even though you might like to look at my face. I'm going to give you some slides to guide us through. So, give me a second here. I'll get that. Whoa. Get that set up. I am seeing the weirdest thing here.
I know, it will even out. It does that.
It looks like three-dimensional. Is that right?
Yeah,
Is that a time warp thing?
Yes.
Whoa, it's getting even deeper. Woo! It's very psychedelic. All right. Well, in a minute, it's going to come up, and I'll start with a little bit of an overview about the 10 core drivers that get us into what I call the productivity zone and help us to stay in the productivity zone. And you said it, Shannon. It's, when we're productive, we're profitable, right? We're making more profit. So when we focus on productivity, we're really focusing on our profits. And oh, there we go. Do you see what's on my screen?
It's perfect.
Okay, great. So, and I start with the whole idea of stop the tug of war with time as an introduction, because it is for so many business owners and entrepreneurs, business leaders everywhere, that's a major challenge for them, is to figure out this thing called time management so that they can focus on what's most important. And I'm not going to spend too much time on that, but I do want to highlight the importance of being able to shift away from focusing on time and really shifting the perspective to focusing on, our energy aspect. And I'm going to tell you a little bit more about that, but it's not going to be the main focus of today. However, it is critical, because when we focus on something we can't control, what does that create for us? Shannon, what does it create?
Stress.
Stress. And stress is the number one productivity killer, right? When you're stressed, what happens? You don't think clearly anymore, right? So we just want to shift people's perspective here away from time and really towards energy. To introduce this, I wanted to share a personal story because it's one that I use a lot when I'm presenting live, and I think it's so relevant. About 20 years ago, I was running my own technology business, and I was the HR person, I was the finance person, I was the sales person, I was the marketing person, I was the consultant. And yes, I had a group of people, but I still wore so many different hats, and I really wore myself very thin. And in order to get out of this situation, I thought I'd get a job with a bigger company. They'd have more resources and my problems would be solved. Usually that's when a lot of people laugh very loud. So I went to a large market research company that I thought was very well established. They were, in the top 4 in the world. And I was living in Zurich, Switzerland at the time. And just before I was to take over, the chairman of the company told me I was going to be part of a task force. And in this task force, what ended up happening was I took my boss's job, which meant I was now not just the chief technology officer for one company. I was now responsible for 5 companies in 5 different countries and in a foreign speaking country, so in Switzerland. So needless to say, that was a little bit more than I had bargained for. I thought I was going to an easy sort of 9-to-5 type of job. And, and that's really reality today is there is no real 9-to-5 job, right? Especially if you own your own business.
Yes.
And, what was really interesting is very quickly I got overwhelmed and overloaded and because I was doing things the way I had done them before. And I went into my boss's office, the chairman who had hired me, and I said, look, I don't think that I'm the right person for this position. Because I was really doubting myself as to whether I had the skills, whether I had the knowledge. I certainly didn't have the experience for this size of an organization and the magnitude of what I was really had in front of me. And he said something very wise, and it shifted my whole perspective. And I want you to think about this, everybody who's online, in every context of your business, whether it's in sales or it's in any other aspect that you're managing of your business. He said to me, Penny, I hired you to make decisions. And what you do with the rest of your time is up to you. Think about that. That's really profound. At the time, I was thinking, well, that's easy for you to say, right? But I thought about it, and it's so true. That focusing on the decisions was being more strategic, and I was stuck in the day-to-day, in the tactical. So in your sales, as you approach how you manage your time, you have to think about it more strategically than tactically. So let's take a quick look, and please, if you guys have any questions, you want to make any comments, we can interrupt as we're going through. That's totally fine. Put them into the comments box, and Shannon will call them out to me because I can only see my slides. So really, it was because of Peter and that wise statement that he made at that point in time that shifted the way that I thought and really put me into a place where I wanted to help others to shift the way that they think. And so I wrote the book called The Productivity Zone, Stop the Tug of War with Time. And this picture that you have in front of you is a framework from that book. And please, if you're statistically minded, this is not a bell curve. I know it looks like one, but resist the temptation to think of it as a bell curve. It's really just to represent a framework so that we can see that the productivity zone lies in the center where efficient and effective meet. Those are our axes. And it's quite a wide space, I want you to recognize. That means that in order to be in the productivity zone, we can focus on any one of these 10 core drivers. And we're not going to go into those in detail today. I'm just going to very high level go over them. They are available in my book, and we will talk about an assessment that you can actually do to assess where you are in those 10 core drivers, and also on a regular basis help you to continue to think and act more strategically, because that's what those 10 core drivers are designed to do, is keep you in the zone where you think and act more strategically. So what's on the other side? You're probably thinking, well, the other side is what we talked about before. It's where stress lives, because when we're stressed, we are not productive. We go into fight, flight, or freeze mode, which means that as our body releases cortisol into our brain, that's a hormone that basically gives us fuzzy thinking and really keeps us from the very thing that we want, which is the productivity. So using these 10 core drivers, we're able to transform that stress, right? That unproductive stress. There's certainly also productive stress, and that is within the zone. And that's going to help us to transform it. When we are not in the productivity zone, we are either over-functioning or under-functioning, right? I want to keep it very simple for you so that it's clear to understand. And those have two names. Under-functioning is called procrastination, and over-functioning is called perfectionism. You might call it something else. You might call procrastination avoidance or fear, or whatever you want to call it. You might call perfectionism micromanagement or just one more thing. Whatever it is, analysis by paralysis. Those are a simple way to look at how you're being productive. And that relates to any part of your business. So if you're thinking about it from the sales perspective, you're thinking about where are you overworking something and where are you really avoiding something that needs to be done on your sales side. So it's just a high level of the framework and understanding what we're going to talk about today. So these 10 core drivers are broken out into 3 segments to help us better understand the sequencing of what they are. So the first 4 drivers are about our championship psychology. So our psychology is how we manage our energy. And if you've ever heard me talk before, energy is everything. The energy that you bring into a sales relationship or into a personal relationship or in any interaction, the energy is everything. We all know people who walk into a room and can suck the energy right out of the room, right? Shannon, do you know somebody like that?
Yes.
And we want to run for the hills, right? Run for the hills from that person. And we also know of people who magnetically draw us to them, and we want to be with them more. We want to interact with them more. So, and that's in our psychology, and that's in the how we show up for our time. Because a lot of the time management strategies that you hear about, they focus on what we do with our time. And that's what we're going to focus on a little bit later in the call. But I want to bring to your attention that how you show up for the time that you have is the most important element of making that time productive. Because you can have the greatest strategies, but if you don't have the right psychology, then you're not resourceful and you're not using those strategies to their fullest. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Awesome. So let's talk about what are those four drivers. They are motivation, understanding how to motivate yourself, right? And also how to motivate your buyer, the people on the other side, the prospects, the people that you're talking about, or even motivation in your clients and keeping them loyal. Our self-talk, the language that we use, that is so impactful, because if you don't feel that you can do it, if you're talking negatively yourself of, this isn't going to work for me, or, whatever it is that most commonly comes up for you, the energy that you bring across is completely felt by others. And it's also comes out in the language that you use. Well, I hope that you work with me, or, well, do you really hope? That means maybe you're not as confident that there's going to be value for them to work for you, right? So it's the nuances in the language that you use actually has an energy that comes across and unconsciously will impact you and the others around you. Focus. And focus, I don't want to go in, I've got a lot in depth around focus, but I'm going to take one aspect, and that's what I find for most people is they focus on what they don't want versus what they want. That's what I call mental focus. So you want to really align yourself to what it is that you want and focus on the steps that you need to take in order to get what you want. When you're not focusing in that way, then you're either procrastinating or you're stuck in perfectionism. And lastly, it's self-care. Duh. If you don't take care of yourself, then you're not going to be able to bring your best energy. If you're not eating well, if you're not sleeping well, the fact is, and I know you know this, but we've got to put things in place to help us to manage our energy, because we know, and it's proven scientifically, that our body affects our mind and our mind affects our body. So you need to use that to your benefit to control it versus it controlling you. That's absolutely core. So that's all I'm going to say about this energy aspect today. However, I said it before, I'm going to say it again. Energy is everything. There's this sequence to the way that things work, and energy, this psychology aspect, comes first. So even though we're going to talk about the other first, I want you to come back and think about these and integrate these into what you're doing. And if you decide to take the assessment and continue on with the assessment, it'll help you to stay on track in each of these areas, because it delivers weekly assignments and helps you to continually come back and refocus on these 10 core drivers. And what we're going to talk about today is that second segment, which is winning strategies. It's how we create leverage. It's taking that psychology and putting it into then planning, process, and prioritization. And we're going to talk about that in the context of time blocking and how to make sure that we're focusing our time on our highest priorities and creating a process around that. So that's what we're going to talk about in a moment. And lastly, we got to make that sustainable. We don't just want to have a blip up in our sales and then that's it. We want to make it sustainable. And by making it sustainable, that's where we have that growth mindset. We create that momentum, and an object in motion stays in motion. And that requires us to recognize our progress and learn from our missteps, as well as learn from what is going well and continue to do that. We need to measure. You can't manage what you don't measure, so you need to be able to measure. So many people don't measure and think they know the results that they're having, but the truth is, once they really do measure, they get a completely new insight to things. And that helps them to then be proactive and also to see what their progress is. So they're all of these drivers are somewhat connected, but I had to pull them apart so that we could use them in this framework and understand each one individually. But as you start to make progress in any of these areas, you're going to see in your assessment and the ratings that you have on a weekly basis, you're going to see more than one go up when you make a shift. So that's where the true benefit comes from. So any question to this point before we talk about mastering time blocking?
I don't see any questions. Anton said hello.
Hello.
That is it. So thank you for gearing this towards sales. I'm excited to hear, because it all affects the bottom line.
It all affects the bottom line. Absolutely.
So any other questions? I'm looking in the other chat room. Okay.
Okay, awesome. So why are we talking about time blocking and mastering time blocking? And some people on the call, you might be thinking, well, I already know about time blocking and I already plan and manage my time. I chose this picture of a black belt in karate because what's important to understand is that mastery has many levels. So no matter where you are today in your ability to plan, there's always another level, right? There are multiple degrees of black belt. So get away from the I know this kind of mentality, because what happens in our brain is then we stop learning. So you want to really sit up in your seat and be excited for some new nuances that are going to come to play. And for some of you that planning might not feel as comfortable, it might feel, in a context, it might feel unnatural because you're not used to planning in this way. It might feel uncomfortable because whenever we make a change, it feels uncomfortable, and we've got to work through that. And it might even come to you to feel unnecessary and say, oh, this isn't necessary. And, I felt that way when I was learning karate, where you've got that punch that you're going to make and your hand is tucked up towards the sky, and then you twist it to punch out. And I thought, this is silly. This is unnatural and uncomfortable, and I don't think this is necessary. I'm just going to haul out and whack the person, right? But what happens is as you learn and you practice and you condition, right, this new behavior, you see that it has that much more power and energy behind it because it enables you to use more of your body and more of the energy of your opponent. So I encourage you to appreciate that this is a process of mastery, and it's not going to be by next week when we meet that you will have mastered it. The key is to condition it over time. So why do we time block? Just real quick from the audience, Shannon, from you, whoever is in audio, why do we time block? What are some of the reasons why we would do that?
I think the big aha with you is like it was real easy to time block my business, but when it comes to personal life and long-term goals, it creates balance and can accomplish all of the things that I want to do in life.
Right, because we tend to do the immediate things that need to get done, and we block those, right? And then our long-term goals fall away, or unfortunately, so do some of our personal relationships. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think we were talking about date night. I mean, there's just so many things that it can really go if you're just focused on your business and short-term goals, then you really miss a lot.
That's right. And so I have some additional items up here, right? Is we time block so we can see what kind of capacity we have so that we can plan for it, right? We want to be able to time block so we can focus on the things that are the highest priority so we don't get stuck in a reactive mode, keeps us proactive. It actually helps us to create, increase our creativity. I know that sounds silly, but it really does, because it gives us some space. When we get all of those things that are important to us on and scheduled, then we don't have to keep it in our head. We know that we're going to get to that, so we don't have to do that. And it gives us, more consistency by creating that habit, and also gives us that forecasting. And one of the things it also does is it helps us to remember all of those key areas. And we're going to talk about that and how it's made a difference in some of my clients' business, and how they were able to really turn around a situation where they were losing money to a situation where they were then able to make a lot of money based on one little tweak in their time blocking. And systems, they support us. So SYSTEM stands for, like this acronym, save yourself stress, time, energy, and money.
Love it.
It's systems, I mean, there's a reason why, right? It helps us to automate things. It also helps us when we are stressed to have something to fall back on. I had a client who we were working together, and we were working on his time blocking, and he had gotten away from it. And I simply asked him the question, what is it that helps you be at your best? And he said, structure, a system. So I didn't want to tell him, I wanted him to remember. So you guys know that too, is that when you have a system, it makes it much easier for you, and it reduces your stress, as this says, and really helps you to optimize your time, your energy, and saves you money at the end of the day. And everybody wants to do all of those things. Oops. So, and I just want to say, I said it, before, just because you know what to do doesn't make it easy. So I know this isn't easy, and I know that you may have done this in the past, or you may do it in a different context of your life. I'm working with one client who is actually going to be interviewing, is in the final round of interviewing to be an astronaut, and which is really cool. And she knows what to do to plan for races, because she actually swam the strait, and she had to plan, for Ironman and these different types of things that she's done, but she doesn't really do a lot of planning like she needs to do for this upcoming interview, in terms of interview questions, in terms of a number of different things that they have to prepare for. And so I said, take that experience that you have from planning in the other area of your life and use it for this. So maybe you've got this skill that you use somewhere else in your life, so just transfer it, because strategies are cross-contextual. You can use it. And it's okay. It might not be easy, but you know that this is going to support you. And if you really want to commit to those long-term goals, if you want to double your business, or you want to bring on additional people so that you can create a huge impact in your marketplace, then you have to do this. So you've got to work through the part that's uncomfortable, unnatural, and may feel unnecessary. So let's look at what are the steps to master in time blocking. Again, I'm breaking these out, and in my course, you can go into these in more depth. But I'm giving them to you here so that you can think about each of them individually, and we're going to go through them today in the process. So the first one is goals and milestones. The second one is categories and drivers. And don't worry if you can't read that too well. We're going to go into each one of them, and as a gift, you're going to get this at the end as a takeaway, so that you can see what those steps are and be able to reflect back on them. So number two is the categories and drivers, is understanding, how do we, when we've set our goals, how do we understand what's driving the results? So those are the what I call the lead indicators in making those goals a reality. Then what about the time allocations is number three, is we have to understand where we're currently allocating our time and see where the gap is of where we need to be allocating our time based on the drivers. Number four is valuing our time, is appreciating and understanding what the value of our time is, so that we can get to number five, which is to delegate all the things that really aren't necessary for us to do. Let go of the control, so to speak, and enable us to really create leverage. Number six is that implementation phase. And then number seven is really reviewing and adapting, because as I said, this is a process of learning. This is a mastery over time. I always say that you have to give yourself a period of an acclimation period. So as you start a new process or any type of change, don't expect full change right away. It's okay if that takes some time for it to develop. Just track your progress and appreciate that each week that goes by that you're doing it, you're making some incremental progress. So let's look at the goals and milestones. I like to take the big goal, right? We put a man on the moon. We need to think big, right? In your goals, are you thinking big enough? Because when you think big, it's going to make you think about your schedule differently. So I want to challenge you to maybe think bigger than what you're thinking right now, because that's going to have you approach everything differently. Shannon, I think you and I had talked about this, is that, you can make one little tweak, and that's also great to tweak your schedule a little bit here and there. But what if you had to think completely differently? Like I have a goal this year that I'm going to get 250,000 people on my platform. So I have to think differently. I have to think more strategically, even more strategically than I've already been thinking, and align my actions to that in a different way than I might have in what I've been working on up till now. So by thinking bigger, it just gets you to also to think about different ways of doing things, opens up new perspectives.
I'd love to share what I was thinking.
Please.
Well, we were talking about the Dare to Live challenge and kind of acting as if you're living your last moments. And you questioned me, or you had me thinking, what would you do if you only had, I think it was like 4 hours a day to work, or 4 or 5 hours a day to work. And
right.
It just sitting with that and that process is really, it's like, what would you accomplish in that time period? And it really alters your whole scheduling process. We act like we have all the time in the world, right?
Yes.
But to condense it. So just that big question shifts purpose and things. So thank you.
Well, it may shift purpose. Absolutely. May shift purpose. And what if your goals stayed the same? What if you still had those big goals? What if I said that I'm hitting that 250,000 people on the platform, because that's going to enable me to donate a minimum of $250,000 to Heart of a Fighter. But what if I only had 2 hours a day to do that? Now I have to think very differently about how I'm going to achieve that. So it could shift your goals and your purpose. And that's okay too, right? Is to get clear as to what you really want to do with that time. And if you only, if you had such a reduction, how would you think differently? How would you approach it differently? Or even get into somebody else's mindset. How would Richard Branson, how would he go about thinking to achieve that goal?
Yeah, that's great.
So think big. And that comes into the categories and drivers, right? So if you're thinking that you're Richard Branson or anybody else that you admire who's created, maybe made an incredible impact or whatever, is you want to understand, what are the categories and drivers that drive to that result? So for instance, my client that I was working with who owned and ran a magazine, her goal was to double her business, and she was actually losing money and was to bring her business into a very profitable situation. So we had to look at, well, what were the profit drivers of her business? And she was focusing on acquisition. And she was missing one of the important categories and drivers that made all the difference, which was customer loyalty. So I asked her, what was the drop-off rate of advertisers after the first year? And that rate was significantly high. It was somewhere between 80 and 90%. So she was spending all of her time on customer acquisition to get more people advertising, and that is a driver. However, another more significant driver, right, even though it was in the category of advertisement for the magazine, was customer loyalty. So we needed to make sure that her actions were aligned with her goals. So as we went through to the further stages, is that we said, well, how many hours a week do we need to spend on customer loyalty and providing value to existing customers so that they know how to make more of their ads, that you can support them in creating better ads, etc. Like, how do you create that relationship during that time? And we set aside 2 hours a week. That was all that was necessary. And that was maybe even more than was necessary. But we also came up with different things that she could do in terms of newsletters, in terms of videos that went out to educate them on how to create a great ad, how to make your ad so that it could be tracked and things like that. And so what happened is we flip-flopped that number. So the drop-off rate that was between 80 and 90% then was less than 10% at the end.
Wow.
Right. Wow. Because she was spending her time it was just more reactive, right? Oh, I've got to run and quickly get new customers to do ads, instead of focusing all the time and having a plan of how she's going to keep those and then still go get the new customers. So therefore, every single new customer that she brought on was profitable. So the categories that you might be thinking about when you're thinking about your sales and how what is driving sales for your business? So think about that. You have existing customers. What about inactive customers? What are you doing with them? You have an opportunity to reactivate them, and they're much easier to reactivate than going out to get a new customer. So we need to also set priorities on each of those drivers and in the areas to be able to see, okay, how can we utilize these best? And that's thinking strategically and aligning our goals and then our drivers and our tasks. So number 3, I got to keep an eye on time here, is then our time allocation. So now that we say, okay, this is where I need to be spending my time, right? So she identified, okay, I need customer loyalty. I need 2 hours a week. I need so many hours a week dealing with customer acquisition, so new acquisition. I need so many hours a week to work on content. So she created all those categories. Now you need to take the calendar and put it in the calendar. Now you notice that I've been talking about weeks versus days. So a lot of people who schedule and plan on a daily basis, and I'm not saying you shouldn't do that, but when you do this process, you want to plan in these categories. And then when you do your daily planning, then you can identify, okay, here's the tasks that I'm going to do today that relate to customer loyalty, for instance. So I'm going to write my newsletter today, right? Then you can get down to the task, and you know how long that task is going to take and whether it needs to be broken out into 2 parts, 3 parts, or it can all be done in one segment. But in the time allocation, this is where we get clarity as to what kind of capacity do we have? And we can compare it to where are we spending our time now. So for instance, another one of my clients was not spending any time on acquisition. He was getting caught up in all the different kinds of existing customer questions and content that he was producing and so forth. So he really wasn't focusing any time on direct acquisition. He had less than 10%. So that was in his tracking process, in his time allocation, he was able to identify where was he spending his time when he defined what categories and what percentage he needed to be spending his time. So he needed to be spending 25% of his time on customer acquisition. So now he could plan that capacity to see, okay, what does that mean? So when I lay that out in my calendar, oops, I'm actually planning myself 150%. So that's not going to work, right? So that's when you start to find out what needs to go. And so some ideas in this allocation is also understanding how you work. I put some daily and weekly themes because you might have a month that you're focused on new acquisition and you have real bigger campaigns that are going on that, or you might have a month that's focused on creating that content and that education for your marketplace and so forth. So this was an example of Rook, who is a great designer and has a great marketing firm. He gave me, when we were talking together, he said, well, here's how I organize my sales plan. He says, on Monday, I plan my sales plan for the week. On Tuesday, I sell it. I go and I make my calls and I sell it. And on Wednesday, I wait it out. And on Thursday, I go in to close it. And on Friday, I do my administration, because nobody wants to talk to him on Mondays or Fridays. So he's got to make sure that he uses that wisely in terms of his sales process. So when he was doing purely sales, that's the way he did it. I also have an example here of the Seattle Seahawks and how they focus on different topics for each day. So on Monday, it was Tell the Truth Monday. It was look in the mirror and really see what needs to be updated or fixed. Tuesdays, they took off Tuesdays. It was a relaxed day. Wednesday was focusing on the competition, looking and analyzing the competition and what they were doing and how they could compete in a better way. Thursday was Turnover Thursday. How do they create more turnovers? Friday was No Repeat Friday. And Saturday, they would review all of those concepts. And of course, Sunday was game day. So, think about your schedule and how you could organize it either on a daily type of a theme or a monthly type of a theme. It helps you to create greater focus. It also makes it more fun, especially if you're working with a group of people. Then you get everybody focused on the same thing. So I have a chiropractic client, and they have a day that they focus on education. They have a day that they focus on process. What are the things that are driving your business to create leverage, to create more sales, and create the experience that you want to create? And make sure when you're scheduling that you don't schedule yourself 100%, and especially not 130%, which most people do, right? You're going to be frazzled. You're going to be stressed if you're going from meeting to thing to thing to thing, and you don't have any time in between, that you're not planning your family time. So you want to plan for your workouts. You want to plan for your meditation or anything else that you do for yourself. Maybe it's, that scripture reading or even your surf time, to make sure that you have time to watch the shows that you love to watch. Make sure there's time for your family. Include transition time so that you have time to record everything that happened in the previous meeting and move on to the next. Maybe that means don't schedule hour-long meetings, schedule 45-minute meetings. And that gives you 15 minutes to wrap up for yourself, identify what's next, and take a short break. Make sure that you plan for your administration. You can plan for your urgencies as well, right? You can set a couple of segments during your day or during your week to deal with the urgencies so that you know that they're going to be handled and you don't have to do it during the time that you've actually scheduled for those things that are driving your business forward. So really expect the unexpected. Anything that you want to add in there, Shannon? I feel like, I love the interaction, and on these webinars, it's not as much interaction.
No, which we'll have a little bit more next week. No, I think it's great because I think that I've been guilty of booking my entire schedule and not even leaving room for what pops up. So that's, this is great.
Giving yourself that flexibility. So number 4 then is valuing your time, right? When now you see that there's, in your allocations, there's actually, maybe you're booked 100, usually what happens is you realize that there's 150% of time that you need to be spending. So now you need to see what's the value of my time and what's the highest and best use of your time. I was working with somebody who brought in, he was a broker, and he brought in $500 million to his company. And he believed that he had more potential. But there were certain things that he wouldn't let go out of his control. And we asked him, he spent 70% of his time on proposals.
Wow.
Now I said, yeah, and on the surface you'd think, okay, well, that's where you should be spending them, right? On proposals. At the same time, I said, are there parts of that process that could be done by someone else or that could be standardized or automated in some way? And, he wanted to maintain the control over it. But when he found out and valued his time and saw that based on what he brought into the company and what potential he had, that his hourly rate, he was worth more than $5,000 an hour, it allowed him to loosen up the control that he had and realize the potential, and that he could find a pretty good assistant to help him for less than $5,000 an hour. I mean, I was going to work for him if he wanted to pay me $5,000 an hour. But so you see, when you can really appreciate and put a value on your time, just because that you think you can do it best, and just because you can do it doesn't mean that you should do it. So you really want to look for where are the opportunities, which lead us into number 5, which is to delegate. Where are the opportunities to let someone else support you? And delegation can also be a form of using systems or automating a process or something of that nature. So there's a whole segment that we go deeper into to talk about delegation and how to give it away but still remain in control. Because what are the challenges? What do people say? Why don't they delegate? Well, there's not enough time. It takes me more time to delegate something than it does just to do it myself. Yes, maybe in the moment, but in the long run, it's going to save you a lot of time because it will add up, and it's one less thing that you have to keep in your head. I can tell you, anybody who has broken through to the other side of delegation feels so free that they were able to delegate small and bigger tasks to free them up for more creativity and more of the things that drive the business, that really drive it and create that leverage, that you can create a multiplier. A lack of resources. People say, well, I don't have the resources. I don't have the money, or I don't have people that I can give it to. Well, there are a lot of great ideas that are out there that you can find. Actually, the other night, Shannon, who was it? What was her name? Karen? There was a painter who was looking to multiply her efforts. And so some great ideas came up about how a painter could teach others and have others in a course or through emotional therapy. They could do her paintings and follow her process. And at the end, they give her the paintings, in exchange for what they took away from it. And she gets to sell those paintings. Wow.
Yeah, there's some great ideas.
Right? Instant resources. So sometimes we're just limited in our thinking, and it's not that there aren't resources, it's that we're not resourceful. Going back to the points that I talked about how we show up for our time, those energy management aspects. I guess goes into the same point, lack of labor or budget, lack of knowledge. right? Is we say, oh, well, others don't have the knowledge that I have. I've been in this business for 55 plus years and so forth. Well, believe it or not, that knowledge is teachable, right? You hear about it all the time. People read books to learn best practices and learn from those who have the experience. Maybe it's you're just afraid to share it because you're afraid that somebody might show you up. I don't know. But you got to get over the fear and understand that you can transfer that knowledge. It may take some time, but you would find some great methods in order to do that. So I don't know, do you have any of these or all of these as your excuses as to why you're not delegating? Whatever it is, get over it, all right? And so number 6 is to implement it. You know, I like this quote that how you leverage the wind and sail make all the difference in your speed and performance. And that's really what you're looking for in your sales, is you want to increase your sales. So it's how you really use your focus in and around your planning of your time, right? You know, some of the things that I didn't mention that I know that people don't plan for their sales meetings. I've met so many different people and they don't plan. They don't take a look at who is this person in a little bit more depth that I'm meeting, because by looking in, and there's so many resources available, by looking at LinkedIn and looking at Facebook or anything that's written out there about them or that they've written, you can easily build rapport very quickly with them by having done your homework up front. But people don't take the time, they don't block it in their calendar to make sure that they have that time to do that. So therefore, when you get to the meeting, it takes a lot longer to build that rapport with those people, and that means a longer sales process, right? Do you get to find out what challenges they have? You might even find that out right through that process. So it's leveraging this process of time blocking and planning and thinking and acting more strategically that's going to help you in this implementation process get results immediately. From everybody that I've talked to, you know, it's like they may not recognize their results, and that's one of the things we'll talk about after, but review and adapt. But I had somebody I was working with, and one of her main goals was to write a book. She had a limited amount of time. She was a single mom. She had young kids. So she decided she was going to write in the mornings before the kids got up. And when we met the next week, she says, oh, you know, I failed. And I says, well, tell me, how many times did you write this week? And she said, once. I said, how many times did you write last week before we started this process? She said, none. I said, so how is it that you failed? Yes, you didn't reach 2 times a week, which is what you set as a goal, but you're 1 time better than the week before. So that's progress. So we need to remember to celebrate our progress during this process. So let's take a couple of ways that can make your implementation work even better. How you start your block matters. This is, again, what I was talking about in terms of how you show up for the time that you have. If you show up feeling like, ugh, I hate this, and not motivated to do it, well, it's going to take 3 times as long. So take a few minutes in the beginning of that block to get clear on what it is you're going to accomplish out of that block and how you're going to approach it. Get in a positive state of mind. Think about what's motivating you and start that block in a positive attitude, right? Maybe you need to do a short meditation or set an intention, whatever works for you. But start that block in a positive way. By using these time blocks and using timers, it's going to help you to condition your behavior, right? Because this is all about conditioning. You may not be used to doing this. So you need to take the time to start doing it. And, you know, what people, like that woman who didn't do it twice but did it once, celebrate when you're getting some of those blocks in and you're changing the focus that you're having. So maybe you're not getting 100%. Maybe things are still taking you longer and you're understanding how to better plan because now you're more attuned to how long things are taking so you can set your blocks differently. Maybe you find that you learn that you need shorter blocks than longer blocks because you have a short attention span and it serves you to work for 30 minutes, take a short break, and then come back and work for 30 minutes. So it's a learning process. And the timer, actually, believe it or not, this is used a lot with kids with ADD. It helps you to stay on task and it allows you to get, clearer focus and block out distractions because I don't know, it's something psychological about the tick, 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 right? You know the time is ticking. You know you've got to get it done in a certain period of time. It adds a little competition to it as well. So, you know, something that our psychology likes is to compete with ourselves and to get it done in that time frame. And so use these tools that are going to help you to, as I said, condition this new behavior. And then we've got to manage distractions, right? That's one of the key things that's taking us away from the things that we want to be doing, is because we've got all these got-a-minute meetings, right? People are coming by our desk or calling us when there's not scheduled, asking us questions, doing different things. So you've got to take control over that. You've got to, you know, if you're in an open office space, there's different things that you can do with one another to say, hey, let's schedule these times when we openly go and ask each other questions. So instead of coming whenever it's an urgency for them, that you can set, like in Switzerland, when I worked in Switzerland, they had breaks for the whole company at 9:30 in the morning so that people could, you know, build some relationships and also could ask any questions that they needed. And then again at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So it's doubtful, if you really asked yourself if something is urgent, it could wait for a certain period. So create some open office hours so that people know that this is the best time to come in and ask questions. You can do the same with your emails. You can schedule time when you're going to check emails and make phone calls back and things like that, because those are distractions. When you hear a bleep that you just got an email, even though you might not go look at it, your mind goes, oh, I wonder who that was. And so you're taken off track. So you need to really identify where all those different distractions are. You know, I love this cartoon. Is this guy's wearing this dog cone, right? Is because you've got to control yourself from. Isn't that awesome?
I could probably use that occasionally.
Yeah, you know, I was going to bring that to workshops. I was going to, you know, just to see the craziness of it. But the fact is that we are subject to all of these impulses. We are impulsive creatures, and that's why a lot of people procrastinate, because they're stuck in impulsive behavior, or perfectionism as well. That's an impulsive behavior too, right? Or compulsive. So we need to set up our environment to support us, right? I know this is crazy, but you know, if you don't put things in place to keep you from doing things that you know you shouldn't be doing, or whatever you need to do, you know, I go to this isn't a distraction, but I have to put accountability measures in place for myself. I go to a trainer, because if I don't go to that trainer, then I'm not going to go to the gym. I know myself well enough that I need to have that structure in place. A lot of people work with coaches. I work with people who say that, you know, they don't really sit down to do the assignment until a day or two before we're meeting, but it makes them do the assignment. And that's why they're bought into the accountability. So look at how you can control your environment and manage those distractions. And in the program, there are worksheets with each one of these levels that help you to really identify where your distractions are and to track them, and takes you through that process. Again, it just gives you that system to fall back on so that it can support you through this whole mastery project, let's call it. And lastly, you got to review and adapt, because nothing is perfect. This is a work in progress. So you've got to really take a look at, as I said, your accountability. Where can you up your accountability? Where is it not working that you see, okay, I've got to put something else in place here. Review your results and your priorities. How are you really focused on your priorities? Do you realize that maybe they're in a different area? Are you getting the results that you want? Are you making progress? Celebrate as well. Give yourself, you know, a pat on the back for making progress, and you know, and create some rewards for yourself, because that's an important process too. Is creating something fun that you can say, okay, I'm going to pick from my gift jar, and in the jar, when you pick from it, there's, you know, something that you're going to do for yourself as a result of the progress you're making. So celebrate that progress. As I said just a minute ago, so manage that environment. Our environment is paramount, and if something in your environment is distracting you, you must control it. And really, you only have you to blame because you can control almost everything in your environment. And you want to anticipate what distractions might come up, because then you can come up with ways to combat those distractions. And, measure that gap and that success. So, that's why I say you only have yourself to blame, right? Is when we blame and we make excuses, it makes us feel better, but at the end of the day, it doesn't get you better results. And you're here on this call because you want results. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here. And you know that you need support in order to get those results. So you have to be accountable, and working with a system, working with a coach, working with Shannon or myself in any capacity, or anyone else for that matter, or creating buddies together, something that's going to help you to stay on track, because we need that. It's just the way that it is. We all need that. So if you're ready to be accountable through my process, I'm happy to offer that to you. I have around the 10 core drivers that can help you understand, as I said, think and act more strategically and relate it to how it's supporting your sales process. You can use this assessment. You take it once, and that one time will give you sort of, if you've ever taken a personality profile like DISC or Myers-Briggs, it kind of gives you that initial awareness, that aha of, oh, wow, this is where I am, and this is what's holding me back. And then the real gift is when you take it on a regular basis and you track yourself. That's something that we, with a personality test, you don't really have that. Your personality isn't really changing. Maybe the way that you're interacting with people is, but your productivity is changing on a regular basis from week to week. And so this is a way to make sure that you focus on the things that are driving your business, that are helping you to stay focused on sales and focused on the 10 success factors that are keeping you, in continually growing your sales. So there's the assessment. This is a picture of it that breaks it out into those different categories. And so that's available. And then also this time blocking system, if you want to get the full, it's got a series of videos along with worksheets with each of those sections, that too is available. So it goes through each one of these sections and has about 3 or 4 lessons in each one, and has also worksheets that go along with it that allow you to take you through this. And it's one of those things where you can go in and do your planning, and then come back to some of these areas where you might think, okay, I need to do this again, or I need to refine this. So it gives you the ability to go back and forth as you like. And lastly, I'm going to tell you, I know it's lunchtime for some of us, right? So this is going to make you hungry, but I'm just going to tell you a little story to end us off here. And that's my story about the tuna sandwich. There was a guy who every day he would come to work with a tuna sandwich. And every day he would complain about that tuna sandwich. And his buddy would be sitting next to him every day, and he'd say, oh, I can't stand tuna. And then the next day he'd come in and he'd say, not tuna again. And then the next day he'd say, oh, the smell of tuna is driving me crazy. And finally, his buddy said, dude, why don't you have your wife make you something else? And he says, I don't understand. He says, turkey, roast beef, something else. He says, no, I don't understand. I'm not married and I live alone. Let that sink in for a minute. He's causing his own problems that he's complaining about. Don't be that guy, right? So if you're complaining, you're not getting the results that you want. Put your money where your mouth is and take action, right? It's time to make a decision and to move forward, because really at the end of the day, we only have ourselves to blame, and everybody else can see it except for us. So it's time to look in the mirror and see where is it that we need to make a change and step up and take action. So that's it. Here's the offering here with the links. Shannon, I think you're going to put them on there as well. But basically, the assessment itself is $27 to take it once, and $27 a month to take it on a monthly basis. And with that, you get weekly assignments. And the time blocking course, I forgot to put it up here, depending on which version you choose, you can take it as an online only. You can take it with the assessment, which is then a monthly, or you can join a group coaching, which helps you to get into more specifics, kind of like what we'll be doing next week as a gift to you guys, but on a regular basis.
And I did put the link, we put it up on the website, businessaccelerationsummit.com/productivity. So
awesome.
You also mentioned some homework, and I know we're at the top of the hour. If I didn't see, Marty Ward says hi, by the way. And so I don't know if there's any questions you want to ask as we're wrapping up, but I know you mentioned some homework between now and then. Do you have a suggestion on how we can kind of get the best out of this next week and prepare for next Wednesday?
Yeah, what I would say for next week is, in the context of what we talked about today, take one area that is driving your business and decide how much time do you need to spend in this next week in order to make progress. So is it 3 hours a week? Is it 2 hours a week? An area that you haven't yet been focusing on, that you've identified needs to be in there, and block the time for it. So maybe it's that. Maybe it's blocking the time for the urgency. So instead of checking your email, I think the average is 135 times a day.
Oh my gosh.
So maybe it's setting up blocks of time and building in and conditioning yourself to only answer emails at certain times of the day, right? Take one important change in your schedule that's going to make a difference in helping you to optimize and maximize your time, and put that in your schedule. Because if I told you to do too much, right, then it would be too much. Just one thing.
Great. And so you are giving everybody the 7 time blocking steps at the businessaccelerationsummit.com/productivity. The gift is there, but I was just sharing in the chat room that there was actually a challenge with uploading it. My assistant will get that figured out, so it will be there, but I'm going to be emailing it out to everybody, so you will also get a copy of that via email. Yay. And I don't see any questions that have come through. I just want to share one thing in closing, and I think I just lost it. It was as you were talking about the blocking the time, how, I think it was this whole thing around the balance and the relationships and the sales. And next week, Penny's gift. This is what I was going to say. One of Penny's greatest gifts that I think makes her unique, and I know some people can do this, but I haven't seen anybody do this like Penny is when we get together next week, we're going to invite you to join via video. So have your camera ready. We're going to put in a link. You can actually join us right here. We don't care if you're in your PJs. You can actually shut off the camera like this, so all you see is an image. So that's kind of nice. But we're going to invite you to do that. But one of the things that Penny is very gifted at is she's able to take an individual challenge. So let's say Marty was saying, I'm doing this big event and I'm trying to schedule time block on this area that I don't really like to do. And Penny starts coaching her and guiding her. Well, what she has the ability to do is take one person's challenge and really make it universal so it applies to everybody's business. So just seeing her gifts are really powerful. So you want to join us next week. She's definitely remarkable. Thank you, Penny. I took a lot of notes.
Thank you. Well, and what'll be fun next week is then people can get specific, and that's when it's broad, it's harder to get to solutions as it is when you start to get specific.
Yeah. Anton, who's an author, he said, brought me so much clarity. Thank you, Penny, in the chat room.
Great. Happy to hear it.
Perfect. So everybody that's here is already registered. You'll get the link for next week automatically. And Penny, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And we will see everybody next week.
Perfect. Thanks, everyone. Take care. Have a good week.
All right. Bye for now.